So welcome to our session about the mysterious law of externalization, as well as some shocks of the future that are here today already. You will probably remember, if you've been coming to these sessions, I like to give some predictions, sometimes from years ago, and they are coming true. I'll give you a couple shortly. And what is interesting is that as they come through, they're coming through much quicker than we expected. And this is one of the phenomenons that people, you read the authorities saying that such and such is going to happen in 10, 20, 30, 50 years time. I remember it wasn't that long ago, in months, probably 9 months, and they were saying that the driverless trucks would come in probably 20 years by the time they got their act together. Well, it's 2 years now, so that's what they are looking at. They've done the test, they're all underway, and it won't be long before a lot of us won't be allowed to drive on the big freeways, except with these electric vehicles that are connected to the computers and the artificial intelligence and so on. So we're going to look at that. It's very, very important. In fact, probably this time that you're living in, you've got a window of probably 12 months now to prepare yourself, to make sure that you've got everything in place, because life will suddenly change gear and get even more rapid than it is at the moment. A lot of people find it difficult with the rapidity of what's going on, and therefore I recommend strongly that you listen carefully to this. I'm going to go through these steps that are necessary, and I've got a little process to give you as well. I'll send you a PDF about that via this system. Hopefully it works, and that will help you greatly as well. So what is this session about? It's about creating the ideal experiences for you of living and then securing your financial future. These are the two things. Previously, people, all of us, were able to get by in life without too many hassles because we were living in a time where there were plenty of funds from the government. There were more workers actually on the job than there were pensioners. And so because there were, I think it was a rate of about 16 to 1 about 40 years ago, where there were 16 workers for every pensioner, so that was easy to look after the pensioners. Now it's going to turn almost the other way, where it's 16 pensioners for one worker. Not quite as bad as that, of course, but it is certainly a very challenging time that's coming up. The governments are unable to take reasonable care of everyone. If you've been following the super funds and taxes and means tests and all that, you know that is true. And things are different now. Things are radically different. They're going to get even more different, even more challenging. And this is why it's very important that you keep up to date. You get to know very carefully what it is that's coming, because it is quite surprising and shocking, actually. And what is going on now that wasn't going on 10 or more years ago is that the whole population of the planet, and that includes the so-called third world countries where they can do it, are being mined for their data. This is what they call it. In other words, everything that you do gives a piece of information, and every part of your life is now recorded in some way or another. And you would be shocked at just how much information is held by the wealthiest corporations and government departments about every individual. I heard on the radio today as I was driving back home that in China the collection of information has been codified and perfected to the point that your access to the normal things of life is dependent on the score, they call it the score, that is measured from your daily actions and behaviors. So you're given a score, in other words, the points are attributed to you without any of your knowledge. You don't know this is going on. And it's all about how you live, where you live, your salary, your earning capacity, your spending habits. What are you buying? Are you a reliable person with your bills? Do you travel? where do you travel to, what shows do you like, what do you buy, what do you eat, what are you interested in, and so on. In other words, everything, every detail is noted and kept in a digital file, and all these details, they're worked out by artificial intelligence, and they give you a score. And that number, I don't know what the range of numbers is, but everybody's somewhere on this score. Now that's one thing, that's bad enough, let's face it, but what do they do with the score? This is very, very important. The score dictates what is allowed to happen to you. Now think about this very carefully. It says whether your child will be allowed into the best schools. It's to do with your score. It's what kind of home will you be allowed to buy? What job can you be accepted in, and how high up the pecking order can you go in that job? Can you borrow money? And if so, how much? And so on. In other words, every normal choice that you would make as an individual now is dependent upon the score that you have. Now, this is the complete fantasy of socialism par excellence, you know, communism and all these things, that they want to control the population and make them little ciphers. In other words, little walking pieces of data. And this is not just China. This is not just those kinds of countries. Everything in your life is now already beginning to be determined by the data that is collected on you. It's already in the West. You look at what the big social media companies can do, what they can collect from you on your phone. You're showing where your location is. You're showing where you're going on the phone. Or everything you buy, you think, you call, etc., etc. They know everything about you. It's got to the point that they can tell that if you are a drug runner, let's say, and you do certain things, you make certain choices and decisions in life, they can tell that you're a drug runner and you're about to go and pick up or drop off or whatever with drugs. And they can tell by the flights that you book. So if you take a flight from Australia to Bali and then to London and then to South America, that pattern has been laid down in millions of people, or perhaps hundreds of thousands. That pattern's been laid down of somebody going to pick up a deal and import it illegally into the host country, in this case Australia. That's how they found a certain drug mule, a girl who was picking up drugs recently, a few months ago. And they could tell, Interpol could tell, before she even flew excuse me, to the country where the drugs were going to be picked up, before she even bought the ticket, they could tell what she was going to do. And when she did it, they pinpointed her, they had her picked up at the airport, her luggage searched, and sure enough, there was all the drugs in little packets. Now, that is shocking, that they can tell what you're going to do before you even do it, and they know what you're up to. So what you're moving into, and this is why it's so important to get this law of externalization in place for your own good, everything is moving more and more towards mind control, control of the population through their minds, in other words. And modern corporations practice mind control with their own workforce. They get people to share common values, culture, events, circumstances, whatever it is that they do. Now, they talk about corporate brainwashing, saying that these big corporations are trying to create a monoculture of planet Earth where everybody mixes up, because that's easier for their distribution and their income. That's why they're doing it. This is why the fight is on with Brexit and the EU. The EU and the big multinationals are in it together to stop Brexit working. They're trying to destroy Brexit, because if Brexit goes through, they are out of the control of the corporations, and the corporations make about 8% less, apparently quite a substantial amount of money. So they're very, very against it. And what you find is that people are in these big corporations, there are special people in there who are giving what they call self-improvement programs, but in fact they're really brainwashing programs to form everybody into a little box where Big Brother, as they called it, in 1984, that book, Big Brother can control the population. Now, that was a sort of filmic fantasy in those days. It's a reality now. So the educational systems are all part of that, whichever you are, left or right-wing politics, doesn't matter. Everybody is in this corporate world. Previously, it was a religion that ran the society, the military that ran society. They used to get all their children marching up and down in uniform so they'd be ready to fight in whatever war that the elites put on for everybody. So what you are facing is quite a shocking thing, and we'll hear more and more about it. They're trying to break it up, if you like. Some governments are trying to do that. But until the time comes where legislation is created that gives each person the total rights to their own data records, whoever's got them, and the ability to make it a criminal offense for companies not to delete it when they're asked to or instructed by the individual, then it's going to continue to grow. And what they want is everybody to become a purchasing puppet. This is how consumer society has evolved, and we're all little cogs in the consumer society, and that's fine, it can be useful, but what you want to do is to make sure that you are not made a victim to this in some way or another. And basically what they're trying to do is merge socialism and capitalism and all those things to form one sort of working order, but people are different. Somebody hasn't alerted them to that fact. I mean, all those ideas will end in tears, of course, as they always do, but this is where the human race has evolved to. And this is why you have to watch out what's going on, as I'm going to detail to you now, in this future time that's coming, because you don't want to have your life more and more restricted. You want to be free, quite obviously. And everybody wants a life of freedom if you really dig deep and ask them. And it's very important for you that you make this one of your big goals. You don't want to find yourself enmeshed in something, like a mortgage, for instance, where you're tied up and can't move at the drop of a hat, should you so want to. So money, now more than ever, needs to be the #1 consideration for you, because money is the escape hatch from these kinds of things. And to get money, you've got to be a person, as we discussed previously, of ever-increasing skills. That's the way through this net, ever-increasing skills. You're very likely to live far longer than previous generations. I'll show you why in a moment. And there are several more changes coming that mean having your financial act together is crucial. So let's look at the shocking and astonishing future. First of all, which predictions have come true that we've been talking about over the last few years, and therefore that shows you how quickly things are happening and what you need to do to take advantage of these things. Now, in the West, teenagers often get their first jobs at fast food restaurants, cafes, McDonald's, and so on. But now that there are robot burger flippers and hot chip fryers automatic, these jobs are becoming things of the past. Now, in India, where labor is extremely cheap, many people gain their jobs in large warehouses, delivering packages ordered on the internet, and they earn about $10 a day. But now a small robot, an Indian company I think it is joining these factories, and they can do in 1 hour what it takes an ordinary human being 5 hours to do. They collect everything from the vast systems of shelving, and the goods they collect are loaded automatically onto a conveyor belt, and this belt delivers them to the distribution mechanism for loading onto trucks 4 times as fast as a human being can do. It's much cheaper to use these robots and automatic devices, even though the salary level is so small. It doesn't matter, and this is the important thing for you, because if they can put $10 a day people out of work, a small robot, imagine what they're going to do for someone who's on $200 a day, the average wage of somebody in an advanced or a developed economy. And it looks like 80% of these jobs will disappear, and that's going to be tremendously challenging because these entry-level jobs are what people rely on in the third world countries to feed their families. So they're going to bypass that whole thing. The robots will come in and do their thing, and there'll be nothing for them to do, and they won't be able to work their way up and pay for their education, perhaps something of that. And because of the scorecard, which will no doubt come in as well, they'll have a low number on it, and they'll be demoted through the system. This is what's happening, and probably return to their villages in order to eat, with no way out. No other jobs in the area from village farming practices. Now, they estimate, this company, that within 3 years, those warehouse jobs, which there are hundreds of thousands of, will start to slow and then disappear completely within that period of time. So, yes, there are skilled jobs growing all the time, very, very good, but unless you've got the skills, they're no good for you. We can see as well that 3D printing, which was a little idea we talked of a couple of years ago, now is out there regularly. It's the need for large factories making things that are then packaged into containers and shipped across the world is going to reduce rapidly and dramatically, because every town will have its own 3D printer shops printing out whatever anyone wants. And it's estimated now, today, that 3D printing is likely to destroy about 25% of global trade. Now you think about that, 25% of global trade means 25% of jobs, as well as other parts of trade. And what it means is that all the associated infrastructure and industries to take containers from the factory to the ship and across the world, the ports, the railways, the delivery vehicles, will be unnecessary. They may even disappear completely. So it's not just the factory which manufactures goods that will have to close, it's all the associated activities as well. So think about your job now and your future. Are you associated with any of those kinds of areas that might be affected if there's a 25% drop in trade? What you see people will have to do is just take along a piece of computer code or a web address to the local 3D shop owner and say, print that for me, and they'll print it for you. And they're selling 3D printers in Office Works and all those kinds of large stationery shops. And it's the same, you see, as that whole kind of habitat of factories and deliveries and all that starts to get taken away, then all the animals that live in that habitat, in other words, the people who work within it, there'll be nothing there for them to do. And it's the same with the driverless semi-trailers and trucks. They can go non-stop. They never pull up for a meal or a motel room in a little town. All the associated suppliers of the truck drivers will also be eliminated because they don't stop. They just keep going. They might stop for a bit of fuel, but they'll have huge tanks on, I'm sure, which will allow them to go vast distances. So it's going to clearly slash and burn a massive amount of jobs all across the country, particularly in small towns, and only create a smaller amount in the various towns and cities where the 3D factories will be located. You can buy for yourself a t-shirt printing system, for instance. I've got a friend who bought one, and he can print out as many t-shirts as he wants with unique images on or words on and so on, and he's doing quite well out of it. In fact, very well at some time in the holiday years, with the time of the year or other that people come up. So there will be things that replace it, but it's going to have an amazing effect, an unexpected, confusing effect. And some people believe it's 30 or 40 years away. Well, they need to wake up because it's here now. It is here now and happening. Now, let me tell you just a few other things, then we'll get on to the real secret for you. I'm grateful to Peter Diamandis of Singularity University for much of this information. In the UK, there is a barley farm, the crop barley, that is completely worked by a selection of automatic tractors, harvesters, planting machines, robotics, in other words. They take the crop from planting through its total life cycle to harvesting and bagging and delivery to the warehouse without a single involvement of any human being. Now, they're doing it on a couple of acres at the moment because it's an experimental thing, but it's working very, very well. And guess what? It's going to be upscaled to a whole farm. Now, what does that mean? That's very serious. Think about it for a moment. John Deere, the farm machinery manufacturer of tractors and big machinery, is turning itself at the moment into an artificial intelligence, robotics and technology company, as well as writing software for these new systems they are creating. Now, just think about that. There you are, you're a farmer with some farm workers, you've got big trucks, machinery, etc. there. They require drivers, they require packers and stackers and lorry drivers and all these kinds of people. Those are the jobs in the country towns. Now, can you imagine what it's going to do to country life when the small towns in the rural environments find that their businesses, the little town businesses, are savagely reduced because of the fact that the workers don't have a job, there isn't a job for them, they can't come in and put their money on the table and keep that business going. The town will die. That's what's going to happen. If there is no source, like a mine or a farm, one of the big industrial things, a government department, perhaps something big, which is what the powers that be put in these towns to keep them going, if there's nothing there, what's going to happen? So that's something else to think about. And you mix that with the driverless vehicles, scavenging all the jobs as well, you can see what is coming. The farm owner will do well, but they'll become more managers of machines than anything else. So all farming companies are going to have to turn themselves into technology companies if they want to survive. No company wants to follow the path of Toys R Us. You remember Toys R Us? 400 odd stores, fabulous toy stores, huge, almost warehouse-sized stores, particularly in the States. I used to go there a lot with my children. Bankrupt because they didn't get their internet act together. They had an arrangement with Amazon. I won't go into it. You can look it up. And it went all pear-shaped. And they found that they couldn't sell through Amazon anymore. And that was them. They're gone. They're bankrupt. I think they're in Chapter 11 where they're going to try and trade their way out of it. But they didn't have the perception to see what was coming. Now, who would have thought that a toy shop, you know, kids want toys. And yes, you can send certain things via internet, but kids love to go to the toy shops. That's the fun. If you're a parent or a grandparent, you take the kids to look at all the toys, they pick one for them. So if those companies are going bankrupt, my goodness, what chance do others actually have? We saw recently in China, they've got a very highly developed technology industry there, and they have developed the ability, the doctors there, to edit DNA and remove a life-threatening blood disease that, should the baby have grown up with it, could really have killed it early in life. But they edited it, they cut it out, they replaced the C with a D or whatever it is they do. Now, that kind of healing will rapidly speed up due to the massive investment that's going into the advanced medical area. They'll be able to prevent most diseases due to DNA, any DNA diseases, stop it arising because they'll be edited out. They just won't be there to arise, quite obviously. Now, for instance, let's again stay in China. There are about 400 million people requiring implants so they can have new teeth fitted. Now, an implant in a very good top-of-the-line dentist here costs you anything from $7,000 to $10,000 for each one. Very expensive. They can do a beautiful job, these experts. The problem in China is they can only do 1 million operations a year. They don't have enough people to do it. They've got 400 million people who need these implants. They've only got 1 million operations a year. Very expensive as well. So the first fully automatic robot dentist, very recently, was able to insert 2 implants into a patient. It's a very highly skilled job because you've got the jawbone, very thin in some people, the jawbone, and they've got to get it absolutely right, the dentist. That's why you go to a very good one, so that it does go into the jawbone and doesn't slip off to the side and skewer out the wrong way or inside your mouth. So it's an incredibly precise thing. And so they were able to, with the robots, they used 2 3D printed teeth as well. That in itself is a pretty marvelous thing, saving another heap of money. Now, you can imagine with a market that size, there's 400 million people who need these things, it won't be long before there are many such machines being used by human dentists sort of supervising to solve these challenges. So that's something that's going to increase. Another big push is for flying cars. They're coming in. Many companies are aiming for that at the moment. At present, they're focusing on a single person carrier. with a 30K radius from the takeoff point. That's going to dramatically increase. A 6-person one I've seen on the design board, and they'll create electric flying vehicles. They're talking about electric planes, partially gas engines, partially electric, and then wholly electric. So that those things are changing. I won't go into any more of those sort of practical things, but let's look at rejuvenation and extending your lifespan. You really want to do that. You want to extend your lifespan, your healthy lifespan, as much as you can. So companies in this area are studying on doing just that, extending your healthy life, so that at 100 years old, and they reckon that's going to come real quick, you'll have the facilities that you had when you were 60. So you'll feel, presumably you were healthy at 60, you'll feel terrific till you're 100. Now what's that going to do? Start to think through these things. What will people who are 100 years old do? Will they still work? Will they have money? Well, they'll have money to afford the medical treatments, I suppose. So you've got to start to think, how am I going to live if I'm going to, be that sort of age? So instead of retiring at 60 or 65, you live till you're 100. That's 35 to 40 more years you need money for. So there's so much money going into health. I'm sure you can understand that if somebody comes up with life extension, they're going to become a multi-billion or a multi-trillion-dollar company, quite obviously, because everybody will throw money at them to get the treatment. Everything is speeding up. They've got a new pen from the University of Texas that can check for cancer in a few seconds. Instead of taking a biopsy, sending it off to the lab, waiting a few days or a couple of weeks, you can check there and then. A number of different cancers can be picked up straight away. And the other thing that you can look at is rejuvenation of the blood, which can be used to solve many of the standard lifestyle diseases. And of course there's stem cells, the regrowth of organs, making stem cells grow in situ. In other words, they pop the stem cells in and grow the new liver if it's had to be taken out, and so on. Another area is the legal profession. We've mentioned these before. You can purchase an app now or pick up one free, I saw the other day, which will do all the legal paperwork for you if you wanted to sort some legal issue out or sue somebody or something like that. It can't act as a barrister for you at this point, but maybe we'll get robot barristers as well, because it's all a logic kind of based thing. Now, what are all those lawyers going to do? I mean, who would have thought a lawyer might be out of work? Their bread and butter money is going to be disappearing, and then they're on the way out themselves. What are they going to do? And what are all these people going to do? You see, it doesn't hit just one section of society, it's blanketing across the whole of society. Electric cars, all of them are building electric cars now, the big companies there. All the gasoline jobs will therefore go. They'll be gone. There are millions and millions of gasoline oil jobs. Now in India, they're recreating vast forests. They've got a 10,000 acre forest that they're firing seeds from drones into the ground, ready to go, or damp seeds or something, I suppose. They fire them into the ground, and they're where no trucks can get, and they're creating vast forests. They're reforesting everything that's been cut out or destroyed over the years. That's very good indeed. That'll bring a lot of wood supply, as well as having beautiful forests for things. Amazon has a computer system that designs new clothes. Now, all those clothes designers, what are you going to do when the biggest retailer in the world starts to design clothes and manufacture them and sell them? Who's going to benefit by that? Well, not many people. A few will, as always. There's always going to be the 20%, it's the 80-20 rule. The 20% will do well, but the majority of people who will not be included will find themselves in a very difficult situation. So 50% of all existing jobs are likely to go in the next decade and hopefully be replaced with new jobs. This is what everyone's hoping, and let's hope so too. One thing's for sure, you have got to get your own act together. You have got to develop skills, the skills that can help you survive in the future. Do not wait another second. Everything I've been doing recently is to help you with this. I'm doing some more things to help you with it. You must get this really, really powerfully. I'll give you what's the best skill to develop in a moment. I'll just give you the Google's chief futurist, Ray Kurzweil, He's the person who has an 86% accuracy rate with his predictions. He's a scientist, inventor, very, very interesting character. And here's his few, just to keep you cooking about all of this. 2020, most diseases will disappear as micro robots, nanorobots, can enter the bloodstream and remove all disease. 2020. In those years, 2020s plural, 2020 to 2030. I mean, that's not far away. Do you know what I mean? That's 3 years away. That begins. And they're just going to work it all out. Disease will be a thing of the past. Now, you may think that's impossible, and certainly there'll be always problems, but I wouldn't be surprised to see diseases radically disappearing. You know, they have removed many diseases over the years, so that'll be very nice. It'll probably cost a fortune, but it'll be very nice. 2030s, virtual reality will become 100% real, which means, you know, those goggles you put in and you are in a landscape or a place that looks exactly 100% real. So you can put on your goggles and be walking down the Champs-Élysées in Paris if you're sitting in Sydney, for instance, and it'll look so real, it'll be perfect. So that's what everyone will do, sitting at home, I presume. Now, by the end of the 2030s, or the end of the decade, he says we will be able to upload our own mind and consciousness into the virtual reality and into some sort of artificial intelligence. Now think about that for a moment. Your own mind and consciousness can be transferred into a computer, basically. That's what they're saying. Now, I'm sure a lot of people would want to do that. A lot of people may not want to do that. But let's just say you're old. They've created a clone of your body, you know, a man-made clone, or maybe it's a biologically duplicated clone, and they upload your own memory, your own personality, your own personal mind into it, and now suddenly when you look out of the eyes, you look at the hands and the feet, and it looks pretty close to what you were because they obviously will design it that way, and suddenly you've got this biological, computerized body that you could live for 1,000 years in. That's pretty stunning when you think about it. That's the 2030s. That's not far away either. The 2040s. Non-biological intelligence, i.e. computer artificial intelligence, will be 1 billion times more capable than biological intelligence. That's you and me, in other words. So non-biological intelligence will be 1 billion times more capable. And through, they call them nanotech foglets, they even got a name for them, we'll be able to make food out of thin air and create any object in the physical world at whim. How they're going to do that, I do not know. And in 2045, we, each human, will multiply our intelligence 1 billion-fold by linking wirelessly from our neocortex to synthetic neocortexes in the cloud. There somewhere, as they call it, in the cloud. It's not really a cloud, you know, but it's through the computer. So that's the reality of what we're all facing. That's coming. It's shocking, it's astonishing, and every day, because I study this a lot, something new comes up that you go, how on earth did that come about? It's an amazing time we live. Now, a lot of people think, oh, I don't want to live in a world like that, but believe me, it'll be a lot of fun if you ride the tiger of that experience. And will it change things? Well, I'm not sure how much you can change biology of a human being, but it'll enhance, that's the hope, it'll enhance people's lives, okay? So that's where you are. If you want a terrific life, you've got to accept this world. And now you need to realize that what you have within yourself is something that no robot will ever get, no artificial intelligence will ever get. And this is human energy. This is the patch of electricity or the electrical field, so to speak, that makes you up, that your body is a sort of solidification of. That's a very good way to look at it. They talk about being a spirit in a body, but I think an electrical or energetic field is more easily understood as a possibility. Now, you can take that as far as you like. Maybe you talk about reincarnation and things like that. We're not going to do that here. We just need to get your life together here and now, what is going on. And I call this the law of externalization. We've heard of the law of attraction. That does work. You attract things seemingly to you, but really it's the law of externalization. And how does this mysterious law drive your entire life? And more importantly, how can you use it consciously to make sure that what happens for you in your life is what you want in your future, in other words? Now, think about your system. At a deep internal level, you're basically putting together constantly dreamlike scenarios, playing with them internally, running them through your subconscious and sometimes conscious mind. And finally, and this is the bit you're not aware of, they arise and are projected into your life through the process of externalization. So you are molding and creating scenarios within yourself, usually subconsciously. You don't know because so much of your interior is subconscious. But what happens is that this scenario building doesn't just stay there. It oozes through your pores, so to speak, and becomes your life experiences. And you can see many of these experiences are repeating loops, patterns that restrict you and hold you back. Now, it's very important that you understand this at the deepest possible level so you can develop the ability to dissolve and diffuse any of the scenarios which have not or will not bring you the experiences you want to have. Stop believing, as many people do, that life happens from the outside in. Yes, of course, it is out there, but something else is connecting with it. Some energetic coming from you is connecting with it and drawing the right people, events, and circumstances into your life, you see? Now, it's extremely important you understand this because of the world we're going into. It's going to become very confusing. People are going to become in a permanent state of shock as these things happen. It'll be shocking to see. And this is what a lot of people are in. They call it anxiety, depression at the moment. It's a shock. That's what's happening to people in their lives. Things are not stable. They're not solid. People interact and relate and communicate in strange ways. There's this whole massive social media world going on. So many mad things taking place all the time. You've got these madmen talking about nuclear war, etc., etc. So you need to get your act together in life and look at this most mysterious law. How does it possibly work? How does this law of externalization work? Well, if you've ever manifested anything or thought of something and it comes into your life, that's what happens. You know that's what happens. But what you must develop is the skill to block the externalization of things you do not want to happen. The scenarios are taking place in your subconscious, rolling around, building up based on past experiences, and that is flowing out into your life as your life experiences. So if you want that relationship to work well or attract a great relationship, don't start looking out there. Of course, go out and meet people, but start to work within as well, quite obviously. Now, this mysterious law is needed to be fully understood if you're going to ride the tiger of life in these times to come. And it's got many, many layers. In order to take charge of it, you need to understand what those layers actually are. And if you don't do this, if you don't realize that externalization is what you're doing every moment of every day, it's like driving your car with your head in a bag. A rather dangerous thing to do, quite obviously. But once you get it, once you learn to balance in a certain way, and it requires certain techniques in order to do that, you can catch the things coming up. As you raise your inner consciousness, you can see for the first time in your life how your behaviors and personality are supporting the arising of this particular externalization scenario, and you can dissolve it before it goes into your life. So instead of mucking up that relationship or blowing the money deal or in some way blocking yourself from a great life, catch them before they do that. You see what needs to happen? Now, the law of attraction is great, but it's the wrong way around. You think it's coming from out there. It's all part of this externalization quite accurately. Okay, it doesn't give you the real essence of creation. So don't dismiss it or dump on it. It is what it is. It's somebody trying to help and understand how it works because they don't understand the mind properly. So what happens is this, that you, as you grow up, your personality starts to form. Any experience in your life that has not been unconditionally loving, but puts into you some sort of fear, anxiety, rejection, non-inclusion, and all those kinds of things, what happens is that fragments the mind, the personal mind, the personality. And it's like you've got a piece of wood, let's say, it's not quite as good, but it'll do, and splinters get hacked off that by the external events in your young life. And these splinters don't fly away, they stay there around, and some of them are quite big chunks as well, not just little splinters. And you have this single piece of wood now splintered, put into fragments, little chips are floating there. Now these chips are loaded up with negativity, with all the things I've mentioned, anxiety, fear, etc. They're loaded up with those, and they stay there. Now what they're trying to do is to reattach to the single piece of wood, to reform the single piece of wood, that is the personal mind and personality. And what they do is 24/7 in your subconscious, they're doing everything they can to sort of glue everything back together. And as they do that process, they send out into your life through your conscious choices, circumstances, people, events, whatever it might be, that will allow them to reconnect, to rebuild the personality to its single whole. It's called the synthesizing force. Okay, in depth psychology, the synthesizing force. So you want to synthesize and bring back together all these parts, because these little chips and splinters, they are negative behaviors. They give you strange outbursts, or they make you feel, oh, this isn't working for me. And it's not working for that little splinter because it's splintered off. What will work for that is the connection of unconditional love. That's what comes if you do this properly. So what happens for people, and you'll know this when you look at people through these new eyes, you can see that there are socially unacceptable parts which have to be contained. These splinters are many times socially unacceptable unless you have a very tolerant partner or family, and you start to have outbursts like this. People walk away, they don't want to know. Marriage has become a weaker institution than it used to be, and people run off nowadays. And so when you're talking about your personality, about yourself, in other words, your personal self, you don't realize that it's made up of these many fragments. It's very, very hard to see when you are operating your consciousness through a fragment that that fragment is not attached to the rest of you. So you must bring all that together. Why? Because they will spend your life calling out for some recognition and expression. That's what people's lives are. I'd say 90%, if not more, of people's lives are just living out the fragmented callings out, creation of challenges and difficult behaviors, lack of energy, chronic fatigue, illnesses of all types can come from these too, and just exhaustion and dullness and depression and why is life not working for me? All this stuff comes from that source. So this is why, if you want to get out of anxiety and all that negative stuff, this is why you must activate the synthesizing force and bring everything together, so that you do not externalize them into wherever it is. And what happens is that you do externalize them, we all externalize them, and we manage to find other people. This intelligence of life finds the other people, and we draw them into our orbit and live them out together. So this is very, very important. Don't waste your time trying to make the life out there work. You see, what the powers that be are doing are trying to squash everybody into these ciphers, into these robotic automatons, so they don't make trouble, so they can bury deeply all this fragmentation. So what you need to do is to develop the skills that can pull rabbits out of the hat for you and give you the, wonderful experiences that are possible. You have within yourself right now everything you need to have a great life. You have it there. You were born with it. You arrived, fragmentation started to take place, powerlessness started to arise, confused conditioning went into your head, hypnotic instructions about who you are, what life has to offer, and it's just a mess. And what happens is, and I'll tell you the exact thing that happens, is that people fail to communicate properly. And they can communicate quite well in their ordinary environment, but if your environment is changed, if you go for another job, or you start to set up your own home business, or you enter into a different world in some way, travel to another city and somewhere in the world or whatever, and what you'll find is that as you enter into these different structures with different people who they've been built up over time, you've got to have the ability in today's world to pierce through those and use 7 principles that there are actually to ensure that people appreciate you and want to spend time with you. In other words, you don't want to be externalizing fear, confusion, doubt, attempts to be liked, or whatever it is. That's going to be absolutely useless to you. You want to be somebody who can externalize pure communication, that you can connect with people straight away, that you can extrovert your energy in a conscious way, not in an unconscious way. And if you do that, if you pierce through, which is not a hard thing to do, it just requires a certain number of steps, then these skills will help make your entrepreneurial activities, your money-making activities be successful. Because what is entrepreneurship? It is offering something to somebody else that they want and giving them a fair price on it. So they will give you the money for the item that you're selling. You've got to connect with people, and you've got to think, what is it that I can actually do? Let me just see now if I've got I'm going to send you a little quiz. You don't do it now, but I'm going to put it here. I drag and drop a file. Boom. There it is. And there it's gone. There's the quiz. I hope you've got it there. And what you do for this quiz is that you describe the characteristics to yourself of your spouse or partner, particularly those qualities that irritate you as well as those you enjoy. You describe the characteristics of the best friend who is not your partner that you have ever had in your life. You describe the person who you respect in life the most, the person you get on best with at work. You get the person or the type of person who irritates you the most at work, the person in life who has really rubbed you the wrong way, the people whose behaviors you find immoral or disgraceful, the person who has confronted you the most, the type of person you're romantically or physically attracted to. And that's a good place to start. That's enough to start with. And what that shows you is what are the fragments that you have within yourself. So many people like to hero worship other people. That is something that has been fragmented off their central personality. Many people get into arguments in their relationships, or they're disappointed in their relationships. That, again, is something within yourself. You see, you can perceive your fragmentation. This is just the first step. That you can perceive your fragmentation by examining who's in your world, particularly those on a regular basis. So when you have time, have a look, open up the PDF and have a look at that quiz and fill it out, and then you can start to think about other things in your life as well. So everything in your life, particularly those things that come, regularly, are a representation of something that's fragmented. So if you want to know what's fragmented in your life, what's happened to you, you only have to look outside, particularly at those things that loop through regularly, and anything that has strong emotion as well, because you're drawn to people in life as a means of attempting to integrate the suppressed behaviors within yourself. So you don't know how to do it internally, so you go out there externally and you do it in that way. And that's the key, by the way, when you go through these processes, to developing excellent self-expression and communication skills for this new world that we're creating. What is the most important single ability in this new world? Communication. That's what it's going to be. Whether you are a content creator, whether you're selling something, whether you're working in a company, whatever it might be, a home business, if you can't communicate in the purest, cleanest, most intelligent and extroverted way, it's going to be very, very hard for you to make headway. And people, when in companies, the bosses, when they have to thin down the staff, as they mostly will, unless you're a rocket scientist, then what happens is that the people who can't communicate well will get shown the door. You see, whereas if you can communicate well, you get on well with the other staff, you get on well with the customers, that is an excellent thing to be able to do, and it's all to do with externalizing yourself. So only by becoming conscious of yourself at the deepest level will you be able to dissolve these patterns, these scenarios that form within you, and out they go into your life. So it's very, very important. If you find yourself complaining about everything, realize it's just your old negative emotion coming up for expression. You don't tell yourself off, you don't let it run you, you just observe it. And you use other methods to flush it out of yourself.